Sir, I need you to step away from the equipment.
This is my station, officer.
You heard him, Marcus.
Arms crossed. "Why are you even here?" the manager sneered, voice slicing through the quiet lobby. "This is a real job, not whatever this is." Marcus froze mid-sweep. Every word felt like a weight pressing down on his chest. He knew he had designed every beam, every hallway, every wall of this building. And yet, here he was, reduced to invisible labor. "Excuse me," Marcus said, calm but sharp, his eyes flicking toward the nearby receptionist, who avoided eye contact. The manager smirked. "You heard me. I don't know why they let you in here without supervision." A silent tension crackled. Marcus's stomach twisted, heat rising. The echoes of footsteps in the hall seemed louder, each one a reminder of the eyes silently judging him. He clenched his jaw, trying to focus on the mop, on the routine, on staying invisible. But the manager's smirk widened, predatory. "Better not mess up today, or—" The words hung in the air. Marcus felt the room shrink. A cold certainty gripped him. This wasn't just ignorance. It was authority weaponized against him. Cliffhanger, the elevator dings, and a figure in uniform steps out. Someone who could turn a tense morning into a full-blown confrontation. Marcus tenses, realizing the danger might be far bigger than a condescending manager. The morning sunlight caught the lobby's glass walls, scattering light across the marble floor. Marcus's mop slid rhythmically, but his mind was elsewhere. Every scrape of rubber on tile reminded him of the weight he carried, not just the mop, but the knowledge of every beam, every vent, every floor plan he'd designed. "Why are you even here?" The manager's voice cut through the rhythm like a whip. Marcus stiffened. He knew the manager's type, people who measured worth by uniform and title, blind to actual skill. "This is a real job, not whatever this is." The smirk was deliberate. A public display. Marcus's fingers clenched around the handle. "Excuse me." His voice was calm, but each syllable carried a sharpened edge. The receptionist avoided his eyes. Coworkers whispered in corners. The manager leaned back, arms crossed, confidence radiating. "You heard me. I don't know why they let you in here without supervision." Marcus's chest tightened, each word a weight pressing on his ribs. He took a measured breath, eyes scanning the lobby, pretending to focus on the mop. But the heat rising in his face was impossible to ignore. "Better not mess up today, or," the threat hung, unfinished, dangerous in its implication. Footsteps echoed. Marcus's head turned. The elevator dinged. A uniformed officer stepped out, expression unreadable but authority unmistakable. Marcus froze, every instinct screaming that this could escalate far beyond a manager's petty mockery. "Morning," the officer said, tone neutral, but his eyes lingered with scrutiny. Marcus swallowed. The lobby felt smaller, heavier. Silence stretched, but it was pregnant with judgment, with assumptions based on skin and posture rather than facts. The manager straightened, eyes gleaming. "See, even the police think you're suspect." Marcus's jaw clenched. Calm, he forced himself to mop a little harder. Every sweep of the mop a silent defiance, a message invisible to the smirking manager but clear to himself. He was not powerless. Yet, beneath the surface, anxiety surged. The officer's presence, combined with the manager's glare, meant the morning could spiral into something far more dangerous than ridicule. Marcus's mind raced, weighing each possible reaction, each misstep, knowing a single wrong word could fuel assumptions and prejudice. And then, just as he thought he could navigate the tension, the officer's gaze shifted directly to him, calculating, sharp, as if measuring worth with a silent scale. Cliffhanger, Marcus realized the confrontation was only beginning. Authority had entered the room, and it wasn't on his side. The officer's shoes clicked against the marble, each step echoing like a judgment in Marcus's chest. "Morning," the officer said again, eyes scanning the lobby. "You work here?" "Yes," Marcus replied evenly, forcing calm into his voice. Every word felt measured, each syllable a negotiation between truth and survival. The officer's eyes narrowed. "Name?" Marcus stated it clearly. "Nothing more." "ID?" The demand was curt, imperious, no room for explanation. Marcus's fingers brushed his pocket, where his ID lay hidden among the keys and cleaning tools. His mind raced. He could produce it, but the officer's tone implied more than a simple verification. It was an accusation lurking beneath civility. The manager chuckled from across the lobby. See, even the police think you're interesting. His smirk sharpened like a blade. Marcus's jaw tightened. He wanted to snap, to expose the absurdity, but that would be fuel. Silence became his armor. The officer leaned closer. You look younger than your ID suggests. Working floors. That's unusual. Marcus's stomach knotted. He felt the weight of every assumption, every bias pressing down on him. Microaggressions weren't just words. They were a cage, tightening with every comment. I designed this building, he said, letting the words slip, careful but assertive. Every plan, every layout. Floors, walls, ventilation, my work. The officer's gaze flickered, but he didn't respond. Instead, he circled him slowly, like a predator assessing prey. Sure, the manager whispered under his breath, grinning. Designing, sweeping, right. Marcus felt eyes on him, coworkers, receptionist, strangers in the lobby. Their silence screamed complicity. Every person watching was a mirror reflecting his invisible struggle. Step aside, the officer said finally, tone clipped. We need to check something. Marcus obeyed, but his mind was a whirlwind. Authority, bias, and potential escalation loomed. The air vibrated with tension. Each word, each movement carried consequences he had no control over. The officer's hand brushed over the control panel near the elevators, inspecting as if Marcus's presence was a violation. You're sure you're cleared to be here? Yes, Marcus said firmly. But he knew words were fragile shields. Cliffhanger, the officer's radio buzzed. His expression shifted subtly, sharp, alert. We have a report of suspicious activity in the building. You stay right here. Marcus felt the pit in his stomach widen. A simple morning had mutated into a crucible of suspicion, prejudice, and unseen power. And now, he realized, the officer's attention wasn't just on him, it was on something only Marcus could see, the hidden authority he had carried silently all along. The hum of fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Marcus stayed rooted near the elevator, the officer's presence a weight pressing down on his chest. Every eye in the lobby felt heavy. Colleagues whispered behind their hands, the receptionist kept her gaze glued to her computer, pretending nothing was happening. Marcus's mind raced. He could feel the judgment in every glance, every silence. The unspoken question echoed. Why is he here? Why isn't he in uniform? Why does he look like that? A coworker, Sam, lingered near the vending machine, pretending to check a snack. Marcus caught a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes, a mixture of worry and silent complicity. Sam wanted to speak up, but the officer's presence made that impossible. ID again, the officer demanded, tone sharper this time. Marcus complied, careful not to make a sudden move. Each motion was under scrutiny, each breath weighed. The manager hovered nearby, whispering to a colleague. Bet he's hiding something. Always is, isn't he? Marcus's jaw tightened. He had faced this type of authority before, the quiet, insidious assumptions that spoke louder than any insult. Words weren't necessary. The judgment was in the tone, in the sidelong glances, in the silent fear he was expected to invoke. He turned his gaze to the security desk, where a stack of blueprints lay. His heart sank. One of the sheets, the crucial one with the latest design revisions, was missing. A flash of panic. Marcus clenched his fists. Was it an accident? Or had someone deliberately taken it, hoping to discredit him? The officer's eyes flicked to the desk, then back to Marcus. You're responsible for all this. Yes, Marcus said firmly, though inside he felt the tension coil tighter. His voice sounded small, fragile in the face of authority. The manager chuckled, leaning casually on the wall. Designing and cleaning. Quite the multitasker. Marcus felt the walls of the lobby close in. Silence from his coworkers felt louder than the whispers. They were witnesses, but powerless, or unwilling, to intervene. Their inaction pressed on him, an invisible weight of societal complicity. Then a small alarm buzzed near the maintenance room. A sprinkler panel had been tampered with, dribbling water into the hallway. Marcus's mind raced. He knew the building's safety protocols, the consequences if the system failed. Someone was testing him, seeing how far the invisible line of bias could push. Cliffhanger, as Marcus moved to contain the water, the officer followed, eyes hard, lips tight. The manager smirked from across the lobby. Marcus realized that in this room full of silent witnesses, the next move could cost more than embarrassment. It could risk his credibility, his position, and the fragile respect he'd earned silently for years. Marcus's fingers traced the edge of the sprinkler panel, moving with the precision of someone who knew the building better than anyone else. Every valve, every wire, every warning light had been placed with his meticulous planning. The water pooled slowly, but Marcus's calm, practiced hands contained it before damage could occur. The officer hovered, arms crossed, eyes scanning. "You handle this every day?" he asked, voice sharp, doubting. Marcus didn't answer immediately. "I designed the system," he said finally. "I know exactly what to do if it malfunctions." The officer blinked, but there was no acknowledgement in his tone, only scrutiny. The manager leaned back, chuckling softly, unaware of the near disaster he had almost caused by leaving a cleaning cart under a sprinkler sensor. Marcus's mind worked faster than his hands. One wrong move from the manager's negligence, and the whole floor could have flooded. He suppressed a sigh, keeping his expression neutral. The stakes were higher than ever. Every observer, every authority figure assumed incompetence, while the truth of his skill remained invisible. "Looks like everything's fine," the officer said finally, though his eyes didn't fully relax. "Be careful." Marcus nodded, but his mind stayed alert. He felt the weight of institutional bias pressing down on him. The officer assumed suspicion, the manager assumed incompetence, and coworkers assumed silence. He straightened, surveying the lobby. Each detail, the pattern of light on the floor, the exact alignment of tiles, the perfect spacing of railings, was a silent testament to his expertise. And yet, it was invisible to those who judged him by skin, uniform, or perceived status. A sudden clang echoed from the elevator shaft. Marcus's eyes narrowed. The cables had been stressed, another small sabotage. He sprinted toward the panel, hands moving swiftly, heart pounding. Each second felt amplified under the gaze of the officer and the manager, each microtwist a reminder that his authority was invisible but real. The manager stumbled forward, smirking nervously. You fixed it." Marcus's calm eyes met his. "Yes, and if anyone had checked before placing that cart here, we wouldn't have had a problem." The officer's lips pressed thin, silently noting competence that conflicted with every stereotype he held. The lobby's atmosphere shifted subtly, the weight of truth pressing against arrogance. Cliffhanger, a soft alarm beeped from the security panel. Marcus froze. The missing blueprint, the tampered sprinkler, and now an alert from the surveillance system. Someone was orchestrating chaos, testing him, and he realized it wasn't random. The manager's smirk didn't mask the shadow of a new threat yet to come. The lobby was crowded now. By some twist of timing, or maybe fate, construction workers, office staff, and a few visitors had gathered near the main atrium. A loud beep rang out from the elevator, startling everyone. Marcus's pulse quickened. The elevator cables had loosened slightly, a flaw only he could see before it turned dangerous. Without hesitation, he moved, his hands steady, eyes sharp. "Hey!" the manager barked from across the floor. "Don't touch anything. Leave it alone." Marcus ignored him. Every movement was precise. He had memorized the schematics. Every bolt, every cable, every sensor was part of him. His hands guided the emergency override, securing the elevator before panic could spread. Gasps filled the lobby. Workers whispered among themselves. "Did he just fix it?" someone muttered. Marcus felt their eyes on him, but he didn't pause. The officer stepped closer, arms crossed, lips pressed tight. His stare was calculating, prejudice battling undeniable competence. "Who authorized you?" the officer asked, voice sharp but slightly trembling under the weight of the gathered crowd. "I'm responsible for this building," Marcus said calmly. "I designed it. Every inch, every system, every emergency protocol." The words hung in the air like a verdict. The officer blinked, shifting uneasily. The manager's smirk faltered, replaced by a twitching tension he couldn't hide. "Impossible," the manager whispered to a coworker. He's just the janitor." Marcus's eyes met the manager's. Calm, unwavering. He didn't need to raise his voice. The power imbalance had flipped silently, invisibly, in the span of seconds. A security guard approached, tablet in hand, glancing between Marcus and the malfunctioning elevator. "Everything's stable now?" he asked. "Yes," Marcus replied, moving away from the panel. He didn't boast, didn't linger. But the silent acknowledgement of his authority spread through the crowd like wildfire. Murmurs of awe rippled across the lobby. "Wait, you designed this?" a young office worker whispered. "Yes," Marcus said simply. No arrogance, just the quiet dignity of someone whose work spoke louder than words. The manager's face reddened. His hands fidgeted, as if searching for some anchor of control. He opened his mouth, but no words came. The lobby had shifted, the balance had changed. People were watching. Silence had turned against him. A visitor holding a phone began recording. Marcus's actions, calm and precise, contrasted sharply with the manager's flustered attempts to assert dominance. Every movement, every glance, every reaction was caught on camera. "Everyone okay?" Marcus asked, voice steady, eyes scanning the floor for any lingering danger. The crowd nodded, some clapping softly, others staring in disbelief. The officer cleared his throat, trying to regain composure. "You, handled that well. But let's keep your role documented. For safety." Marcus's jaw tightened. The words were polite, but the implication remained, suspicion lingered, wrapped in authority. He nodded, masking the simmering anger and exhaustion beneath his calm exterior. From the corner of his eye, Marcus noticed the manager whispering furiously into his phone. Likely calling for HR, likely spinning the story, likely trying to regain some imagined control. Marcus had anticipated this. Control had always been an illusion wielded by arrogance, and now it was exposed for what it truly was. "Should we check the other floors?" the officer asked, clearly deferring to Marcus's knowledge. "I already did," Marcus replied smoothly. "Everything else is stable." The lobby's chatter grew louder. Coworkers approached cautiously, their faces shifting from skepticism to awe. One by one, small smiles appeared, gestures of respect forming in subtle ways. A nod, a quiet thumbs up, a whispered "thank you." The manager turned, seeing his audience slowly slipping from his grasp. His smirk cracked, revealing panic underneath. "This isn't over," he said, voice tight, trembling with forced authority. Marcus's eyes followed him. Calm, composed, he didn't respond. Words weren't needed. Every bystander, every silent witness had seen the truth. The facade of control had shattered. The officer finally spoke, his voice neutral but laced with reluctant acknowledgement. "You've handled a critical situation. I'll make a report." Marcus's heart sank slightly. Even now, even after proving competence, authority clung to its assumptions. But he stayed still, letting the recognition of others fill the room. Justice, he knew, wasn't always loud, it was often subtle but undeniable. Suddenly, a soft alarm rang from the security desk. Marcus's eyes flicked toward the screen. Someone had triggered a minor access alert, unauthorized entry. His pulse quickened. The day wasn't over. The manager's plans, the sabotage, the biases, all threads of an ongoing tension that Marcus had to navigate carefully. "Not again," the manager muttered under his breath, face pale. Marcus moved toward the panel, knowing exactly how to secure it. Every motion was deliberate, every decision informed by the knowledge that the eyes of coworkers, visitors, and authority figures were upon him. The crowd parted slightly, forming a silent circle around him. Their murmurs shifted from gossip to admiration. "He knows what he's doing," one whispered. "Yes," another agreed. "He built this place." The manager's face contorted. Words failed him, leaving only panic, envy, and fury in equal measure. He realized that public perception had turned. Every observer had witnessed the truth. His authority was exposed as hollow, based on assumptions rather than merit. Marcus pressed the final override, the alarm silenced. He straightened, brushing his hands together, calm as ever. The officer nodded, a subtle acknowledgement that Marcus's authority was real. The manager opened his mouth again, but the officer cut him off. "Stay here. I'll handle the reports." Marcus felt a quiet satisfaction, tempered by exhaustion. Victory was partial, fragile, and costly. The emotional toll, the constant battle against assumptions, microaggressions, and bias was heavy. But for now the tide had turned. The lobby, the witnesses, and even the officer had seen the truth. Cliffhanger. As Marcus began to walk away, his phone buzzed with a notification. HR had received an anonymous tip. Someone had documented the manager's ongoing misconduct. The next confrontation wouldn't be in the lobby. It would be institutional, legal, and public. Marcus's calm eyes narrowed slightly. The real battle was only beginning. Marcus sat stiffly in the small HR office, the air thick with fluorescent glare and the faint hum of the building's ventilation. Across the desk, a young HR representative shuffled papers nervously. The manager stood nearby, arms crossed, a smug mask barely concealing tension. "Mr. Marcus," the HR rep began, voice hesitant, "we received a complaint regarding yesterday's events in the lobby." Marcus's jaw tightened. He had anticipated this. "I handled a safety malfunction," he said evenly. "Nothing more." The manager scoffed. "Handled? You caused chaos. People panicked. We had to call security. Marcus's eyes met the HR rep's. She avoided his gaze, flipping through a folder that already smelled of bias, assumptions inked on paper, carefully worded to avoid direct accusation but loaded with implication. Procedurally, we have to investigate, she said. There are reports that your actions were outside protocol. Marcus's stomach churned. Protocol? Every move he had made followed safety guidelines. Yet authority and bureaucracy often turned skill into suspicion when skin color didn't match expectation. I followed the safety procedures exactly, Marcus said firmly. If anything, the danger was caused by negligence from your staff. The manager's lips curled. Negligence? I followed the rules. Marcus's eyes narrowed. Rules? Someone left a cart under a sprinkler, nearly flooded the lobby, and tampered with the elevator system. That's negligence. The HR rep scribbled notes, nodding slightly but clearly cautious. Marcus could feel the undercurrent of institutional bias, hesitation, careful wording, and subtle doubt. They wanted to be fair, but fairness was filtered through policies written by people who assumed incompetence before proof. A coworker peeked nervously from the doorway. Marcus caught their eye and gave a small nod. Silent support, small but real. The manager leaned forward, voice dropping to a venomous whisper. You think this proves anything? People will still see you as janitor. Marcus felt a cold tension coil in his stomach. This was bigger than one lobby, one elevator, one manager's arrogance. It was every assumption stacked against him, authority, skin, and status intertwined to create invisible barriers. The HR rep finally looked up. We'll need to review surveillance footage, incident logs, and employee records, she said carefully. It may take a few days. Marcus's pulse quickened. Delays were tactics. Bureaucracy was a tool often wielded by those who didn't want truth to surface. But he remained calm, hiding the frustration, the anger, the simmering sense of injustice. Every moment of composure was armor. The manager, growing impatient, muttered under his breath. We'll make sure this drags on. Marcus's eyes narrowed. He had learned to expect this. Authority rarely yielded without pressure. I'll cooperate fully, he said, masking the urgency in his voice. But the facts speak for themselves. A soft click from the office door drew his attention. The officer from earlier stepped in, hands in his pockets, eyes scanning the room. I'll be filing a report, he said neutrally. Your actions were technically justified, but HR will need to process it. Marcus exhaled quietly, aware that validation from authority carried little comfort. Bias lingered, ready to distort every word, every action. The manager's glare followed him as the officer left. Emotional beat. The fight had shifted from the lobby to paper, policy, and procedure. Marcus felt exhaustion, tension, and the weight of systemic prejudice pressing on him. Yet determination remained, a quiet, burning resilience. The manager tried one last tactic. You think the employees will rally behind you? They'll take my side. Marcus looked around. He saw subtle nods, hesitant gestures, small expressions of belief in him. Silent allies, witnesses whose courage hadn't fully formed yet, but whose awareness had shifted. The HR rep cleared her throat. We'll proceed carefully, she said. Everyone will have a chance to provide statements. Marcus's jaw tightened. Every day, every interaction, was a negotiation with power. He had proven skill and competence, but the fight for recognition, for justice, wasn't over. It had merely moved to a different arena. Cliffhanger. As Marcus left the HR office, his phone buzzed. A confidential email appeared. Documentation exposing the manager's history of negligence, complaints swept under the rug, and biased behavior toward staff. Marcus's heart raced. This was the lever he needed. But acting too soon could backfire. The next steps required strategy, patience, and precision. And Marcus knew the public exposure that mattered most was just around the corner. The lobby felt different today. Staff and visitors moved with quiet anticipation, whispering in small clusters. Word had spread, Marcus's skill, calm under pressure, and the near-disaster interventions had circulated through the building. Authority wasn't just watching anymore, it was starting to bend. Marcus walked steadily, eyes scanning familiar walls that he had designed, each line and angle now a silent testament to his knowledge. He felt tension in every corner, the manager pacing behind him, security officers lingering, HR files waiting to be reviewed. Marcus, said a coworker softly, we all saw what you did. The elevator, the sprinklers, you handled it all. Marcus nodded, calm but appreciative. The silent support of coworkers was subtle, but its weight was enormous. Each nod, each whispered acknowledgement was a small rebellion against the assumptions piled on him. The manager's face twitched. He leaned toward a colleague. "Don't let this get out," he hissed. "It'll ruin everything I've built here." Marcus heard but didn't respond. Words were unnecessary. The balance had shifted. Exposure was already at work. In HR, files stacked high told stories the manager had hoped remained invisible. Documented incidents of negligence, dismissive behavior toward employees, and subtle biases that painted him as incompetent in leadership moments. Marcus had collected this quietly, strategically, waiting for the moment when evidence would outweigh arrogance. "Everything points to repeated patterns," the HR representative murmured to the officer. "If this continues, disciplinary action is necessary." Marcus's chest tightened, not with triumph but with the weight of anticipation. Every micro-twist, the missing blueprints, the tampered sprinkler, the elevator malfunctions, had been threads woven into a larger pattern. Now, finally, those threads converged into a visible narrative. The manager tried one last manipulation. "People will think he's exaggerating," he whispered to HR, voice low but trembling. "It's unfair." Marcus's calm eyes met the manager's. "The facts speak for themselves," he said. A small crowd had gathered near the lobby. Visitors, employees, and even security officers watched the silent confrontation unfold. Some whispered quietly to each other, drawing attention to the manager's repeated failures. The atmosphere shifted from tense to quietly accusatory. The manager's authority had begun to crumble under the weight of collective observation. "Formal complaint filed," said the officer finally. His tone was neutral but carried subtle acknowledgement of Marcus's credibility. "Investigation underway." Marcus exhaled, sensing the tide turning. Yet, the emotional cost weighed heavily, the constant pressure, the need for composure, the subtle trauma of being judged unfairly. He had proven competence, but the cost of resilience was etched into every tense interaction, every avoided gaze, every silent observer. One coworker stepped forward cautiously. "If anyone asks, I'll support Marcus," they said softly, eyes flicking toward the manager. Another nodded. "Me too." Marcus felt the small victories, the quiet acknowledgement of truth forming like cracks in the walls of bias. It wasn't a loud victory, but it was enough to destabilize the manager's constructed authority. Micro-twist. The HR rep handed Marcus a sealed folder, evidence collected anonymously from other departments exposing the manager's prior misconduct. Marcus's pulse quickened. The leverage was real. The narrative was shifting. The manager's face contorted, his composure cracking under the collective weight of observation, documentation, and rising awareness. He opened his mouth, but the words faltered. The room's eyes were on him now, not just the officer or HR, but everyone who had silently witnessed incompetence hidden under authority. Marcus remained calm, composed, his emotional armor firmly in place. Each subtle nod of acknowledgement, each whispered affirmation, each small act of solidarity was reshaping the balance of power. Cliffhanger, the officer's phone buzzed. He read a new directive, immediate suspension of the manager pending full investigation. Marcus felt the tension in the air tighten and release simultaneously. Justice was rising, but the emotional cost, the constant scrutiny, the quiet trauma, remained. The final confrontation wasn't verbal. It was institutional, visible, undeniable. The manager's fall had begun, and Marcus's resilience had finally been recognized. The boardroom was stark and formal, the walls lined with polished wood and glass. Marcus stood quietly, documents in hand, evidence carefully organized. Across the table, the manager sat, face pale, eyes darting nervously. HR representatives, security officers, and a few senior executives observed, silent but watchful. "This meeting is called to review documented incidents," the HR lead began, voice steady. "Evidence includes internal complaints, surveillance logs, and recent operational failures in the building." Marcus remained calm, his heartbeat measured. Every fiber of tension he had carried, the microaggressions, the ridicule, the daily assumptions, was now consolidated in these files. The manager shifted uneasily, the arrogance that had once masked incompetence now hollow and brittle. "You've repeatedly failed to follow protocol," the HR lead continued. "Negligence, unsafe management, and biased treatment toward staff are well documented. This is not subjective opinion, it's verified." The manager's lips trembled. I was only trying to." "Trying," Marcus said softly but clearly, eyes meeting his. "Your negligence put lives at risk. Your bias created unnecessary fear. Your authority was assumed, not earned. The silence was deafening. The room felt heavy with justice long delayed. Small nods from coworkers reinforced the truth Marcus had silently carried for months. Each person's presence validated the reality the manager had hoped to obscure. The HR lead spoke again. Effective immediately, you are suspended pending further investigation. Additionally, corrective training and oversight are mandated. Any further negligence will result in termination. The manager's face drained of color. He opened his mouth but no words came. Authority, once wielded like a weapon, had crumbled under the weight of evidence and observation. Marcus exhaled, feeling a strange mix of relief and exhaustion. The battle had been fought in lobbies, offices, and corridors, but it was finally resolved in the formal arena of accountability. Yet the cost remained, a quiet scar etched by years of prejudice and constant vigilance. One coworker stepped forward, eyes sincere. Marcus, we knew, we just didn't always speak up. But you showed us all what leadership and integrity truly look like. Another added, you've earned the respect of everyone here. Finally, they can't ignore it. Marcus nodded, a small smile breaking through. Recognition wasn't loud or flashy, it was subtle, measured, and real. Every glance of acknowledgement, every whispered thank you, every nod of silent support became a quiet victory. The manager, escorted from the room, shot one last glance at Marcus. Hatred, envy, and regret clung to his expression. Marcus didn't respond. He didn't need to. The truth had spoken louder than any argument, louder than arrogance, louder than microaggressions ever could. Emotional beat, Marcus walked out of the boardroom, shoulders steady, heart heavy with relief but also the weight of lingering trauma. Victory was bittersweet. The journey had demanded composure under constant scrutiny, resilience under silent pressure, and the endurance of bias at every turn. Outside, the lobby bustled as usual. Visitors, staff, and officers passed through. Marcus paused, eyes scanning the building he had designed. Every beam, every vent, every hallway had been meticulously planned. It was more than architecture. It was proof of his knowledge, his care, and his silent authority. He felt the subtle nods of coworkers who had witnessed his struggle and triumph. Justice had been served, but it was quiet, measured, and earned. The scars of prejudice remained, but resilience, recognition, and integrity had won the day. Final reflection, authority, Marcus realized, was not granted by title, uniform, or skin. It was earned through competence, courage, and the unwavering commitment to truth. And sometimes, justice took its time, but it always found those patient enough to persist. Cliffhanger, not in danger, but aware, Marcus knew this was only one battle in a lifetime navigating bias. The manager's removal was a victory, but the system that allowed him to thrive remained. Marcus exhaled, ready for the next challenge, strengthened, tempered, and quietly triumphant.